kindergarten was really hard for me. You know, I was used to spending a lot of time outside with dogs and trees. That was my curriculum. And all of a sudden I was in an environment where I was inside all day long and someone was telling me what to do every minute. Found it really difficult. And so early on, I thought, I want to change this. There's got to be other people around the world who feel that way. And by the time I got to high school, I realized that there were a lot of people around the world who felt the same way. And so I thought I developed a mission. I want to free kids all around. So if you look at this diagram on the screen, designers as change agents, and that map, that's a map of, I think, 30 countries that we're working in, that we're redesigning schools. We've had the good fortune to work with lots of different people. This slide is of Sri Lanka. After the tsunami, USAID hired us to plan 14 schools, green schools. The image over here of the girls in the sun. So the first thing we're thinking about is climate. And over on the other side, the kids in the classrooms, you had 300 kids sharing one computer. So it's really a different world. But it was interesting in talking to the kids, and most of these kids were going to be in vocational schools. 98% of education in Sri Lanka, at least at that time, was vocational. Very few people would go on to university. It seemed like they all were listening to the same song as we were. They had the same needs. If you asked kids who were going to go learn to be a bricklayer or to cut hair, for example, vocational, and you said, what do you really want to do with your lives? And it usually came back the same answer. I'd like to have my own hair cutting salon. Okay, I can make 6 times as much money. I can have some control over my life. And what kind of skills did they need? Well, I need to learn how to use the internet. I want to go to Dubai or Abu Dhabi for 2 years where I can make 10 times as much money as I can here, but I need to learn some English skills. I need to learn how to use a computer. I need basics of how to use a Western bathroom. They were frightened of what it's like to be part of this global world. And I realized that we are really the same everywhere. It was very clear. We're, just a year after that, we're doing a school in Switzerland, a private school, $50,000 a year tuition. Guess what? The kids have the same basic interests. They want control over their own destiny. They want to be able to do research on the internet. They want to be entrepreneurial. And everywhere we go, we have the same basic kinds of interests. As change agents, we need to make this kind of common connection first. We need to go where people are and make sure we have a kind of common ground before we change or design anything new. And so I'll usually start with really simple sketches and get everyone drawing. And they look like drawings that a 6-year-old would do. And that's kind of appropriate, so everyone feels they can do them. So there's a little guy, and now I'm going to draw a globe. This is the we part. Well, let's get some land in there. And we'll go back and give it a little bit of a grid. Well, there's the Earth, and there's that connection, and there's the me, and there's the we. So that's one of about 40 patterns that will typically work together through this idea that we have the independent learner. That's so important. So that little kid who went into kindergarten who felt like he was being told what to do, is not really being nurtured as an independent learner. But also that we, that connection to the world, that sense of what does it mean to be a global citizen, that sense of community, you're also not usually getting. You're not usually getting in high school when you're in individual classrooms. You may be connected to 32 students, but do you really feel connected to a community? People out in the Arctic Circle love nothing better to go out on the land. We learn through our connection to nature and the land, and we learn from others. So you see that elder who's wood carving there, and that's one of the things that inspired me with this wood structure. This is a construction photo. We learn from people like that, okay? We need to learn from our peers, and we can, of course, learn from teachers. But the key is not about teaching. It's about what happens in learning. So this is one of our schools in Tasmania, Scotch Oakburn College, and this is a piece of topiary in front of it. And it's almost too cute seeing this girl hug this. But for me, it's wonderful. It comes full circle. It brings it back to being 5 years old and going to kindergarten and missing the dogs and the trees inside and seeing, well, why can't our schools have dogs and trees as grounding that curriculum? And of course they can. This is a slide of the Esplanade Library in Singapore. I was struck in this slide by the different kinds of things going on in a single space. Now think of your typical classroom, which it's really good mainly for one kind of activity. Teacher at the front of the room, and you also have a series of kids in desks looking straight ahead, right? It's a kind of presentation mode or lecture mode or even storytelling, as it was. Now look at this slide at the Esplanade Library. So you've got a girl who's in a kind of kinesthetic movement mode. And then you've got some kids in collaborative, that we learning mode. And then you've got someone completely independent. You can tell she's in her own space just by the look on her face. Interesting that she's sitting by the window in the light, too. Very different from a classroom environment. And interestingly, less expensive and less space to create environments like this that are fluid and flexible and agile than many, many spaces that are same, many specialized spaces like classrooms. This is a scale we'll often show. It's called a measure of accord. And if you look on this scale over on the one side, you have traditional teacher-centered mass production model, factory schools, okay? And then below that, you have this traditional, what we call cells and bell schools. No one really likes cells and bell schools. No one really wants to be in a classroom for 45 minutes, jump up when there's a bell, go to another one, jump up when there's a bell, and go to another one. Now, on the other side of that scale, there's learner-centered schools, self-directed learning in education. And then on the other side of the environment is this more research and best practice supported design. Okay. Now, looking in North America, we would say on the education scale, we're probably about a 4.5. Our facilities are maybe about a 2.5. Because naturally, facilities are usually about 50 years behind. Buildings last a long time. But it's important when we're working as change agents to work with our clients and say, well, where do you want to be? It isn't our decision as designers. We can inspire, but also to help people have the tools to understand where you're at now and where you might want to go. The International School of Belgium is one of our latest projects. I just got back from Brussels Saturday night working with them. We're in the design phase, so you're going to look at some concept designs. This is a very conceptual view of their campus. When we first looked at it, the school's been around for 50 years, and we're doing 8 new buildings over the next 5 years. We noticed there was no heart, there was no center, nothing that integrated that campus together. So what we did, we created a common ground campus, a common ground square in the center, relating to that common ground curriculum. And then this is the new high school, the first of the buildings. And the idea there, it's actually 5 levels, is this entry and 2-story atrium space is a common ground space. And each one of the new buildings has an area, an atrium type entry, which creates a common ground where you can come together in a sense of community. If you can make out this little space here, that's the main level where your entry, there's a space that whole high school can gather in there on 2 levels. And then as you go higher up, the roof of that becomes an outdoor learning terrace. This is the back side of the building, the forest side, and what's interesting about this is these are little reflective spaces for individual learners. They're like booths. You could have 1 to 4. So those principles that we talked about of independent learner and global citizen are reflected very directly on the outside of the building. Now I want to show some pictures of actual buildings and how in some cases the buildings themselves are actually affecting change. This is Cristo Rey School. It's one of many schools in the Cristo Rey network. Actually, Cristo Rey was started in Chicago here. This is in Minneapolis, close to where I live. And you can see kids dancing, step dancing in the Agora. And it's interesting. These kids come to this school, this high school, in 9th grade. And the first week, they're just shocked because the space feels so different. There's so much variety. And it's treated with a kind of aesthetic respect that lots of different things are happening that we wouldn't expect. This is Hip Hop High in St. Paul, Minnesota. Here, all the kids have their own individual workstations. The dropout rate there was 25% originally. Kids coming back to school, a lot of them can't read at all. Most of them actually have some kind of criminal record already. Many of them did. 40% of those kids are homeless. What we're not doing is giving them a more controlled military-like environment, which is very popular these days. It's one of the trends. Okay, let's keep kids, you know, give them lots of love, tough love. Instead, this is giving them much more independence, treated actually so that they can do even more self-directed learning. One of the key things we do on all our schools, and everyone responds to, is strengthen indoor-outdoor connections. There's no reason why we can't be learning outdoors as much as indoors. And you might say, I come from a cold place. Well, we do lots of cold weather schools. We're doing a high school in Whitehorse, the Yukon right now. And one of the patterns and themes that they talk about in Whitehorse is that there is no bad weather. There's just bad clothing. Interdisciplinary spaces, what we call Da Vinci studios. You could do science and art and invention. And we change the ceiling heights. Variety is a key pattern that we develop. You know, we don't want sameness, we want variety. Interesting, there's research that shows that higher ceilings actually will help people engage in more conceptual thinking. Lower ceilings create more focus. It's not to say we don't want any low ceilings. What we want is variety. That's the key. Both systemic change and incremental change work. They're both good. We want to be inclusive. We want everyone to get to play. So when we have a major comprehensive high school in North America who comes to us and say, well, we'd like to do better too. We don't want a factory school. The answer is not just, okay, you need to split up and become, 8 small charter schools. Actually, that might be better. But it is possible to work with people effectively in incremental change as well. And what you need to do is find those pockets of excellence. Every school you go to, everywhere you go, there's people doing wonderful things. And you need to find those people who are doing wonderful things and develop a kind of common ground with them. And then build a common language of design patterns, goals, and ideas. And then those people will slowly begin to spread that word, and others will want to come on board. So it's going from both directions. It's those big institutions which are slow and hard to change. We can work with them. We can build a common language. We can make for better schools. And of course, then there are those brand new, wonderful, exciting technologies, and they're fantastic to do. So what we can do as designers is we can be change agents, and we can make change all around the world. Thank you.